Hey guys, I'm Richard and this is the Nvidia Shield Android TV. It's one part media streamer, one part games machine. Oh, and it's also host to the most advanced cloud gaming system on the market today. It's a fascinating, if flawed product, and just like the Apple TV, it's based on a grand vision for next-gen media consumption. Google, Apple, Amazon, they all think that apps are the future of the living room viewing experience. They foresee a time where we won't be channel hopping with our remotes anymore. We'll be viewing all content on demand via the internet, delivered by bespoke apps with a big bunch of special features that only high-end streaming hardware can provide. Now, we've already looked at the Apple TV recently, and let's be honest, I wasn't hugely impressed by it. There's a lot of overlap between Apple's box and Nvidia in terms of the core concept, but it's also safe to say that there's a vast gulf between them in many areas. And that's definitely the case with the hardware on offer. So let's take a look at the console itself. One complaint we had about the Apple TV was its lack of ports. You got HDMI, Ethernet, a USB Type-C port you couldn't actually use for anything, and well, not much more. Shield Android TV is a completely different beast. The HDMI port is a full 2.0 implementation, meaning support for 4K at 60 Hz, and that's something that none of its competitors have. We have two USB 3.0 ports, micro USB, gigabit Ethernet, plus a micro SD card expansion slot. And that highlights a fundamental difference between the two micro consoles. Apple isn't so keen on you running your local media or attaching your existing hardware to expand functionality. Nvidia opens this up significantly. So let's say you have a big batch of movie or music files on a USB stick, or you just want to attach a keyboard. You just plug them in here. It's simple. You also get Nvidia's low latency wireless controller in the box too, styled very similarly to the old Xbox 360 controller, but it has a fully rechargeable battery, voice input, and it's basically the default interface for both gaming and interacting with the box. So probably the biggest issue we had with the Apple TV was its remote. It did a pretty decent job of navigating around the interface, but it was not really that very useful at all for gaming. Nvidia's solution, sort of the reverse. You have a perfectly good gaming interface with a controller, but it's not exactly optimal for use as a media remote. I mean, it works, but it's just, well, wrong. Nvidia does supply a media remote though, and it's really cool. High quality build, brushed metal finish, very light to hold, fully rechargeable via micro USB. It's really neat. It's just somewhat unfortunate that, to begin with at least, it was an optional purchase and enormously expensive. In the UK, the remote actually costs more than Amazon's Fire TV stick, which comes with a remote of its own. But thankfully, recent Shield Android TV bundles have included the remote as well as the controller. It's the best of both worlds, and I really hope that this becomes a permanent fixture in the package. But the question is really, what's the big idea with these new media streaming boxes? Why are the likes of Nvidia, Amazon and Apple investing so heavily here? Well, it's all about those apps. And what's needed is a strong user interface to act as the glue that holds them all together. And that's where voice control comes in. Apple TV has Siri, and Android TV has a very similar voice control interface. So of course, you can ask for a specific movie or TV show and the results will appear on screen. And just like Siri, you can ask Android TV to find you content that's rather more general in nature. So for example, you can say, show me the best action movies from 2010. From there, just like Apple TV, you get a big bunch of related content coming up, and you can search by actor, director, whatever really. It's all about enhancing what they like to call discoverability. So in theory, when you zero in on a particular show, the front-end interface should show you all the options you have for watching that specific show. Google Play, Netflix, or even your home Plex server. But here's the rub. Android TV only works like this with searchable apps. If the app supports voice control, no problem. But if it doesn't, you're stuck with launching the app manually and finding the content you are looking for. And unfortunately for Android TV, Netflix doesn't support this, while it does on Apple TV. Basically, what we've got here on both Shield Android TV and Apple TV are a bunch of great ideas with no unifying force behind them. There's seemingly no one at Google, Apple or Amazon forcing a set series of next-gen media standards across all apps. And there's the feeling that Google itself isn't hugely invested in Android TV. All of our digital Foundry videos on YouTube are presented at 1080p 60 FPS, and I can watch them like that on the Apple TV. But bizarrely, Android TV's YouTube app lacks 60 FPS support. It's all a bit weird. Again, it says to me that somebody at Google really needs to take a good, hard look at Android TV and enforce best practices. If Google is making a better app for a competing platform, they've really got to get their act together. But I've got to say this, Despite my many complaints, I have this console attached to my HDTV at home. Put simply, Shield Android TV is the most flexible, the most powerful and the most future-proof media streamer for those of us that like to run our own content locally. Now, allow me to demonstrate that. I captured Crysis 3 and Tomb Raider on PC, running at 4K resolution at 60 FPS or thereabouts. I then encoded those captures into the next generation HEVC codec, the compression system used for Netflix 4K. Then put them onto a USB stick and plugged them into Shield Android TV. I've included links to both files in the video description text, so you can grab them yourself and check them out. Now, Shield Android TV is one of the only media streamers to support HEVC, and it's the only box right now that has full HDMI 2.0 support, meaning 4K 60Hz playback on Ultra HD TVs. I ran these files on a Core i7 PC and decoding took around 70% of CPU time. Shield Android TV decodes all of them in real time with no problems at all. But of course, it's not just about the media. These new boxes are games machines too. We didn't really get on with the Apple TV owing to the lack of a decent gaming controller out of the box, but that's no problem at all with the Shield Android TV. Right now, you have the controller and the TV remote in the package, and in terms of basic interaction with the box, that's a really good deal. Elsewhere on the channel, you'll find my thoughts on Android TV gaming. Nvidia has been steadily building a sizable catalogue of quality games. Trine 2 runs at 1080p, 30 FPS, and despite frame pacing issues, it's really impressive stuff. Geometry Wars 3 is a particular favourite of mine, a brilliant twin-stick shooter that you can actually play with twin sticks out of the box, unlike the Apple TV version, which is otherwise identical. Doom 3 Bfg Edition is available on Shield Android TV, and it runs at 1080p at a virtually locked 60 frames per second, and that's something that the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 versions couldn't manage. Other titles like War Thunder look pretty impressive, but can suffer from inconsistent frame rates. And that's just as applicable to Half-Life 2 Episode 3. Now that's an old game, ported over to Shield Android TV, and while the 1080p presentation is great, the variable frame rates really are an issue. Nvidia's hardware here is second to none. In terms of GPU power, it's light years ahead of Apple TV, but there is the sense that Android titles don't really push the hardware as much as you'd hope. And on top of that, there are a ton of other controller-compatible Android games you can't run on Android TV because the developer hasn't flagged them as compatible with the new OS. So you may well have a big Android games library, but there are no guarantees that you'll be able to run them unless you go to the effort of sideloading them, of course. Another video I'd recommend you check out elsewhere on the channel is my analysis of GeForce Now, the Nvidia cloud streaming platform, which is supported on Shield Android TV. Basically, like all cloud gaming systems, the idea is that it's essentially Netflix for gaming. The titles themselves are hosted on cloud servers with video and audio beamed over the internet to your home, and your controller responses are transmitted back. It sounds like a recipe for disaster in terms of lag and poor image quality, and that was certainly the case with OnLive, the pioneer in this field that went out of business a while back. But with modern advances in internet infrastructure, well, GeForce Now is something of a technological miracle. If you have a fibre connection, you can play at 1080p 60 FPS on a big bunch of games. The image quality is certainly good enough, and the latency is very low, meaning it's quite responsive. There are occasional hitches and stutters here and there, but fundamentally, and this is crucial, it works. You can buy games too, and although they are full price and more expensive than Steam sales and whatnot, in many cases you also get a Steam code too. I still think we're a long way off from cloud gaming gaining traction, even if GeForce Now is exceptionally cool. There's a monthly subscription to pay for one, and that gives you access to a bunch of old but still pretty good games. But that's required even if you splash out full price for a game too. Now, also, one thing that did concern me was how GeForce Now handled The Witcher 3, which is pretty much the most demanding game on its system. I saw this running earlier in the year at a press event at a silky smooth 1080p 60, and I was completely blown away. For me, it was the moment where cloud gaming made sense. This was an ultra high-end PC experience running on a microconsole. But when I actually played the game on GeForce Now, the experience was nothing like it. It was plodding, slow and jerky. It was a real come down after playing at 1080p 60 on the other GeForce titles. Turns out that what we're seeing is a 30 FPS cap and poor frame pacing, giving an experience that just feels wrong. Cloud resources are limited, of course, but The Witcher 3 could and should have been the poster child for GeForce Now. But well, visually it's there, but the gameplay just isn't. So, in conclusion, I love the Shield Android TV as a piece of technology. In terms of its specification, homebrew media support and gaming options, it's really not bad at all. And the fact that you actually get a great controller out of the box makes it a better option for me personally than Apple TV. Oh, and GeForce Now? Well, yeah, there's a monthly subscription, but you get 3 months of free access to the basic collection of games. So my recommendation there, check it out, you might be pleasantly surprised. But the bottom line is that these are media streamers, not game consoles, and the lack of consistency in this brand new interface is a real problem for both Shield Android TV and Apple TV. Generally speaking, the lack of availability for certain media services is bound to rankle, plus of course Apple, Google and Amazon all have their own services that feature very heavily in these boxes. Now, that's fine if you have content libraries there, not so fine if you don't. If you're going to take the plunge with one of these next-gen media streamers, my advice would be not to concentrate so much on the spec or the voice control or even the games, but primarily make sure that the media you want to watch is actually available. Anyway, that's a wrap for now. Please do press that like button if you found the video useful, and of course subscribe to Digital Foundry for more. That's all we have right now. Thanks for watching.